We're gonna talk about working patterns tonight. And what I wanted to talk about, so the working pattern thing is like, what can we do in between the lessons where we can be a little bit creative and put things together so that we're still working on some of the things that we do in the lessons. And oops, about working patterns. So for me, the idea is that we don't get obsessed with doing one movement over and over again, but we connect several things together that then kind of build on each other to get the horse working in optimum balance, in front of the aids, thinking in a positive way. Okay? So it's not about doing everything nitty gritty picky. It's more about keeping going and thinking about the next thing. And because we're thinking about the next thing, the horse starts getting more and more on our aids. And you're thinking about what is the next movement? What am I doing next? And because you're riding toward that, you're going to start to have better control, and you're going to have feel that your horse improves. And we all know what it's like when you're riding and you start, kind of festering on one little problem, or you can't get enough angle in the shoulder in, or something like that. And these patterns are going to help get that, really help to get the lesson going between you and your horse without your trainer, get you thinking in a little bit different way, the way that we think when we're creating the exercises for you. So working patterns are a continuous flow of movements. The purpose of working patterns is to create physical and mental understanding of how the body should move through the movements. And this is, you've all heard me talking about like positive and defending aids. So this is a strategy to really get you thinking about what are we doing instead of what we don't want to do. So get you really working in that positive way. So the way that we do this is by grouping the movements together that help the horse and rider to think in a forward, something happens with my typing, and positively about the exercises, and to prevent stuck and perfectionistic riding. So when doing working patterns, repeat the pattern 2 or 3 times in a row. If it's a bit of a longer pattern, then maybe you take a short walk break before you start the next time. If it's a shorter one, you just roll right into the next one. Or if it's one that works more only on one side of the horse, then you might repeat it in the opposite direction. And if you make mistakes, you just keep going. So if something happens, your horse breaks, or your circle is too small or too big, or any of these things, you just keep going, catch up and just keep going. And then the next time it will be better. And that's why we repeat it several times, because then you start to positively anticipate where you need to be. And some of the things that we're going to incorporate in how we make the patterns is, what way does the horse set itself up naturally? What way is the rider preparing for things? And then is it a horse that's anticipating and starting to, always, trying to figure out what the rider wants to do before being asked? Is it a little bit lazier horse? Those kind of things. Even the horse's conformation will go into how we put these movements together. And then if your horse does not improve with certain working patterns that we're talking about, then you're just going to try a different set. Don't get obsessed with making the working pattern perfect. That's not the point. It's that your horse, after the pattern, feels more on your aids, feels more positive for the next work that you want to do. Okay? So I think what I was going to do is great. So there's our arena, okay? And if you're talking about, where's my little guy? Training level, or, you know, we're talking about basic movements, training level or introductory dressage, then we know that we have our 20-meter circles. Whoops. Oh my God, I'm so crazy with that. We know we have our diagonals. We have in your center lines. And then at the end, you have in training level that you have to get onto the center line again, which is difficult. You can have short diagonals. And we have the transitions, right? So we have transitions, walk, excuse me, walk to trot, trot to canter, canter to trot, trot to walk. And so the working patterns that we're going to do for our training level horse are going to be fairly rudimentary. However, we can make them more exciting than our dressage test. Oh no. What happened? So we want to put movements together that are getting our training level horses forward thinking and operating through the transitions very easily. So what we're going to do is, so if we think about it, we're going to put our 20-meter circles together. We're going to make changes of direction. We're going to change between the gaits. So what would be a good working pattern that would get my horse forward thinking would be to start and to go training level. We can still think about bigger and smaller steps, right? Or faster and slower. So what I want to do is I'm going to think about changing not only the gaits, but I'm going to think about changing the speed or the size of the trot, depending on the horse. Some horses we want to make bigger and smaller. Some young horses we need to make a little bit faster and slower. It's going to depend on your horse. But if we're just going around the arena and we're going to start our working pattern in the trot, then we're going to make a nice 20-meter circle. And then we're going to go forward trot down the long side. And then we're going to make another 20-meter circle. And as we're making the 20-meter circle in the middle, we're going to make that trot a little bit smaller. And then we're going to head down that long side and we're going to make the trot bigger. And then we're going to make the trot a little shorter on the short side. And then head across the diagonal with a nice big trot. And then use the corner and we make the trot a little smaller. And then we do the same thing. Circle, little bit smaller trot, long side, positive forward trot, circle, little bit smaller trot, and then walk. And now we can walk and we can give the horse a proper break, or we can just walk down the long side. And then we can repeat that working pattern again. So it's just a matter of, making your circle, refreshing the trot, bringing the trot a little smaller, refreshing the trot, short, a little bit smaller, diagonal. So now this whole one is in the other direction. Then we do the same. Okay. And so that's a working trot, a working pattern. If the horse breaks a little bit when you're going forward, you just catch it up and keep on going. It slows down a little bit too much on your circle. It doesn't matter. Keep the figure, keep on going. And you're thinking all the time forward. Where am I going? Where is the next thing? And so then that would be like a nice warming up pattern for our training level horses, right? How do I get? So, and incorporate the canter in also. So you're going to, thank you. When we go to add the canter, it can be very similar. So we can pick up the trot. I'm trying to just figure out how to down. So then what we want to do is something very similar with our canter being incorporated. And if we're doing a training level horse, we're doing a young horse, maybe we start with that nice working pattern in the trot only. So sorry that took so long. We're going to be better now. So in the canter, this is like your beginning horses. This is not complicated, but we're going to do the same thing. We're going to, maybe we just trot down the long side. Good. All right. We're going to trot down the long side, and we make a circle in the middle. Not very good circle. Hopefully you ride better than that. And then we canter, and we make a circle in the canter. And then we go across the diagonal, and then we trot. And then we circle in the trot. And then we pick up the canter. And then we circle in the canter. And we just keep going, no matter what happens. And then we come back to the trot. And then we come to the walk. And then we walk on the diagonal. And then we repeat this whole thing again. Trot. Oops, sorry. We got to go down the long side first. Trot. Circle. Canter. Circle. Diagonal. Pick up the trot. Circle. Down the long side. Canter. Circle. Trot. And walk. Now, we're talking about it, and it all seems very, very easy. But when you're riding it, there's going to be a lot of things going on. We need to make sure we keep the flexion. We need to make sure that the horse understands that canter depart nicely. We're going to turn on the diagonal in the canter for our young horse, and then come back to the trot. So we're going to repeat. Then you're going to walk after you do it. And then catch your breath, and then you're going to repeat that whole thing again. What you start to learn when you're doing these working patterns is how far in advance do I need to start talking to my horse to prepare them for that next thing. The first time you do this working pattern, there's going to be mistakes. You might be a little bit late on a transition or something like that. It doesn't matter. You just keep going. And each time you learn a little more. And if you think about doing this working pattern 3 times, by the 3rd time, you're going to be really thinking, here I need to do this, there I need to do that. Last time my horse didn't listen to my canter aid. I need to prepare ahead. I need to tell him a little bit more strict. I have to go on the diagonal. The horse starts cantering bigger. You know, you're going to go and you're going to ask for a little bit smaller steps. These kind of things, okay? And then what you're going to want to do is create a working pattern then that has the canter and the trot. Hey, Yvonne is here. Yay. With a working patterns that have a canter and a trot, and maybe a little bit more transitions in, or changes of direction in. So let's think about that, where we have to get our clean arena now. All right. I'm going to have to go to Zoom school. There we go. All right, here we go. Now we have another clean arena. So now we start to think about, no, that is not it. No. Adding these other things. Training level, we're going to make it a little more creative. We're going to make it a little bit more for a horse that's anticipating. So maybe a little bit smaller and a little bit bigger steps, like we had that first one with only the trot. So let's see if we are trotting down the long side, and then we change direction. And then we make our circle in the trot, and then we go in nice big steps. How did that happen? I don't know. All right. All right. We make our circle, and then we trot really forward down the long side. And maybe we take, all right. Now we make bigger steps down the long side. Then we make shorter steps on the short side. Then we pick up the canter. Then we make a circle in the canter. And now we are going to go a little bit forward down the long side. And then we make again a circle in the canter, and on the circle coming back to the trot. So this is going to be an exercise where we're preparing toward first level. So we're cantering on our circle. We've gone big steps on the trot on the long side, not lengthening, just bigger steps. Short side, short steps. Short side, the second canter, the second corner canter. But you're making that circle. Then we're going to go a little forward down the long side. We're going to circle again at B, and on that circle, we're bringing the steps a little bit smaller in the trot, in the canter again. And then we can come back to the trot somewhere before the corner, and then think small steps on your short side. And then we'll go to the walk, and then we'll make a nice diagonal in the walk. And then we'll pick up the trot, and then we're going to repeat the same thing. So we're going to make a circle in the trot, forward down the long side, short steps on the short side, and then we're going to pick up the canter, circle, getting ourselves organized in that canter on our training level horse. And then we're going to go forward down the long side, bigger steps, and then making the steps a little smaller and a little more organized. Oh, don't you do that. Here on the circle, down the long side, we'll pick up the trot, we'll pick up the walk, and then we give a little break. And I will write these down for you. just so you have something to reference from and you don't have to watch this chaos over and over again. But basically you start to incorporate, and you can make up anything you want. The idea is to think of a pattern and repeat the pattern over 2 or 3 times in a row, and find out that by the time you've just kept going and overridden any mistakes that you've made, and you just do it again, you just keep thinking about the next thing, how rideable is your horse after doing that? And the patterns don't need to be dressage tests, because when you start doing it exactly like a dressage test, then you start getting all picky again, and that the transition didn't happen exactly at the letter, and that the trot wasn't always exactly the same size. This is about making the trot bigger and smaller. Now, if you have a horse that backs up on the short sides, you can actually do the opposite of what we just talked about. You can make your shorter steps on the short side, and go for your bigger steps on the do your short steps on the long side, and go for your longer steps on the short side. You can change those things up. And if your horse is taking off down the long side in the canter, then you might think a little forward on the circle, and then a little smaller steps on your long side, and you may do your circle sooner. So you don't have to do the circle in the working pattern at E or B. You could actually do them at S or R if your horse is a little less balanced in the canter. So if we go and we get a different, an empty thing again. No, don't do that. We get an empty arena again. And then we're going to talk about that. How do we change it up that our horse is taking over a little bit? And all right, there we go. So you go away. And now I need my pen, please. Oh, okay. Okay, so working pattern for a horse that takes over too much, we might start and we might go down the long side in a nice working trot, and then make a forward circle at S in the trot, 20 meters. And now we might come into a smaller trot. And we might do our smaller or slower, depending on which horse we're talking about. And then we're going to go across, and we're going to change direction. And then we're going to make your forward circle. So you get to use your legs and push your horse, but you're turning. So you've got some kind of control there. And then we might come down and canter on the short side. And we might go to V and do our circle at V, pushing our horse a little bit forward. And then we might start making the steps a little bit smaller and actually turn on the short diagonal and trot at X. And then we can do our pushing the forward trot here, and then through the short side and to the canter. And then you're going to be pushing the forward on the canter circle, and then collecting a little bit for your long side or for your diagonal. And then you're coming back to the trot again. And then you can walk, and you can make a diagonal, a long diagonal in the walk to catch your breath. And then you just pick up the trot, and you do that whole pattern again, where we're making our circle in the trot, pushing forward, Now we're half halting, collecting, going across, changing direction. So that's like one turn right away again. No, you're not taking over. Then we're making our circle here, 20 meters. And then we're going to canter. And then we're going to circle. And then we're making that short diagonal. So again, we're getting that horse that's thinking a little bit about taking over. You don't know where you're going. Your trot. And then right away, your circle, big pushing steps, coming out of the circle, half halting steps, then your canter, then your circle, then your short diagonal, then trotting, then walking and taking your breather. And then you would repeat that whole thing again. Okay. So these are training level working patterns that are a little bit more creative and kind of forward thinking than your dressage tests are going to be. They're going to prepare you for your dressage tests, but they're not going to be making everything so picky. Okay, so now I take that guy. All right, this is the one we had before. I don't know where that other thing came from, but that's yay. Okay, good. So then we move up to thinking more towards first level, or thinking more toward first level, but not really first level movements yet. So the one that I really like is where we would pick up the trot somewhere, get yourself organized, and then start by making a 20-meter circle, and then another half a 20-meter circle, and a walk transition. Change direction, and then trot. And then a 20-meter circle. Oops, I went a little too far. And then another half a 20-meter circle, and then walk. Change direction, and then trot. And then your 20-meter circle. Sorry, my fingers. And then your half a 20-meter circle. And then you can canter. And you can go down the long side. And you can make a nice circle at P. And then you can trot. And then change direction. And now you're going to go around and canter. And then your nice circle at R. And then trot. And then change direction. And coming to the walk and giving your break. And you can give the break by going all the way around. And then you can start the whole pattern again. Okay, your serpentine with your walk transitions. So you do the whole circle, a half a circle, walk, a whole. And this is really good for horses that start anticipating, because they don't know where they are. They're doing a circle and a half, not just a serpentine and not just a circle. And you put this one, although it's working toward first level, this is an awesome exercise for any level horse. And if you're in with an upper level horse, you use it as a working pattern for your warming up. It's got lots of transitions going and coming back. Then we start to, does anybody have any questions about how we're managing this? I will write them down. And if it feels confusing, you just print it out and you take it in your pocket, and you don't take every one in your pocket, you take one. And if you feel like your horse really feels better after the working pattern, then that's one you incorporate for a couple of weeks. And if it, or, once a week or twice a week, if it doesn't feel good, then you grab a different one. Okay. So then if we go first level, now we're going to start thinking a little more lengthenings, leg yields. We can even do like shallow loops. which will help with that bending. So if we get, you're going to trot for a little while before you just start the working pattern. Okay. So I'm not really talking about that part, but you might trot the whole lap around the ring or something. You don't need to like trot and start. Get yourself going. And then for first level, maybe we would start with a nice shallow loop where we go in the trot to the changing the flexion, remember, when you're crossing your quarter line. And then you go back in the same direction, changing the flexion when you're crossing your quarter line. And then you're going to maybe come down the center line. And we make a little leg yield from the left to the right. And then when we get to the long side, we pick up the canter. And then we might make a nice 15-meter circle in the canter. And then we could go across the diagonal short and trot and come to the walk and come to the trot and then a shallow loop and pick up the canter and your 15-meter circle and your short diagonal and trot not until the letter. And then you come down the long side and you come to the walk and you come back to the trot. And then maybe you do a nice lengthening on the diagonal. And then walk and then you take your break. So you feel like you just keep going. I have to change flexion, pick up canter, make a circle, short diagonal, keep going all the way to the wall. Like a lot of times with our first level horses, we're trotting at X or we're doing a simple change as you go across X. So for me, I really like to ride my lower level horses in the canter all the way to the opposite side of the arena. So they're not anticipating all the time that every time we get to X, we're breaking. So this kind of a working pattern is going to take away some of the habits that your dressage tests are giving. Okay. I think I forgot my, oh no, we did the leg yield, right? We did the shallow loop leg yield. So, if we can do one where we have, I don't know why it's making me do every single little thing. Another really simple one, but one that really gets you thinking forward is coming, if you're trotting and you get yourself a little warmed up, and then you come down the center line and you make a little lengthening down the center line. And then you bring yourself back to working trot and turn left. And then change your flexion and leg yield off the track to the center line. And then a little lengthening. And then going this time in the same direction, collecting in the turn, and then you make your leg yield, and then you're lengthening, and then you're collecting, and then you can pick up the canter, perhaps on a circle here. If you make a 20-meter circle and you pick up the canter, and then right away, your short diagonal and trotting at S. And then circling and picking up the canter. And then you can incorporate a little lengthening in there. and then your circle, and your diagonal, and your trotting, and you pick up the canter, and then you incorporate your lengthening in there. And then we trot, and then we walk, and we take a little breather, and then we repeat that whole thing again, and then we repeat that whole thing again. And so your horse is thinking forward, and you have energy to bring it back to the doing the lengthenings. It's thinking forward to those cantered parts. Okay. And don't worry, I'm going to write all these down for you, and I'll send them in the notes so that you don't have to remember. But these are just ideas where it takes you away from the stuckness of the dressage tests. Some other things that I really like to do, if you're thinking about now moving up in the levels, things that bringing second level, reversing a bit the way that they put those things together, the test together. So for instance, we have movements where you're doing your shoulder in, and then you turn it into a lengthening on the diagonal. But what about doing your lengthening on the diagonal and then having to make your shoulder in? So you really have your horse forward. You have to get the half halts. You have to get the horse thinking a little bit together, and then you make that into a shoulder in. So sometimes reversing the patterns of the test is going to get your horse thinking a little bit different. There's certain things that then you can also incorporate. As far as flexion goes, a working pattern that's just including different flexion for your training and first level horses, where we might trot down the long side and flex them to the left on the long side, and then flex them to the right for the short side, and then make a short diagonal, and actually don't change the flexion. So now we're flexed to the left down the long side, and then we flex to the right, and you can repeat that right away again. Flex to the left down the long side, flex to the right for the short side, short diagonal, don't change the flexion. Flex to the right down the long side and flex back to the left. These kind of things where you're just changing stuff up. If you wanted to incorporate canter in this, then you might pick up the canter and go down the long side and make a nice 15-meter circle. And then come cross the diagonal, trot, picking up the canter and your 15-meter circle. And cross the diagonal, trotting all the way across, and then your walk. And so this kind of, playing around with putting movements together. If you have a really lazy horse, then what you want to do is you want to make the forward surprising. Many horses come to the short sides and they think about coming back. So I would come to the short sides and I would actually go forward. And then after the short side, ride a little bit smaller steps. And so that's a short span of lengthening. So it feels achievable for your horse. Okay. And if you have a horse that's not easy in the flexion or changing the flexion, I even really like to do a serpentine in the trot where you're actually turning to the left, but you're flexing right. And now I'm turning to the right, but I'm flexing left. And then I'm turning to the left and I'm flexing right. And so I have to really start thinking about steering a little bit more with my seat and my legs And is my horse really supple in the jaw enough to accomplish that kind of thing? So you're thinking I'm bending not a lot, it's just flexion, but I'm just letting the horse flex to the outside. So what's turning my horse to the left when I'm going to the right is that little bit. I'm going to open my left rein and I'm going to use a little bit more my outside leg. And that's all the way around. And now I'm going to be not going, I'm going to actually have to change to the outside. And now here I am. I'm opening my right rein a little bit to the inside to steer, but I'm using my left leg to bring my horse around. So that's a little bit advanced, but it's an awesome exercise to keep the shoulders going where you want them to go, to make sure the horse is listening on your leg and not just, you know, being pulled around with the rein. So that's an awesome thing. And you can incorporate that into a working pattern. You know, pick up, then you're going to come into your left flexion and make a circle and pick up your canter and come all the way around and change direction and pick up your canter. Or you can do a whole nother serpentine like that and then pick up your canter. Be creative. And if you get into a pattern, keep riding the pattern. If your horse is anticipating it in a bad way, you need to figure out how to prepare the horse the right way. Anticipating can be a really good thing, and many people go away from it. They might be anticipating you actually telling them the wrong thing. Preparation is about getting the horse ready, but they wait for your aid. So if your horse is, you know, thinking this is where we canter, this is where we canter, you are riding in a way that's encouraging that. So I want to make my horse get ready for the canter, but I want them to allow me to ask for the canter. Working patterns are going to teach you all about that. Okay, you're not going to stop and repeat it. You're not going to stop doing the pattern because your horse is anticipating. You're going to think, what am I doing that's causing my horse not to get ready? And I always want to have that get ready. That if I make a half halt and my horse stops, that means it wasn't going forward enough. If I put my leg on and all of a sudden my horse gets all touchy-feely, that means that my legs were not on correctly. And their legs are coming from nowhere and all of a sudden startling my horse. So I want to be, you know, hugging my horse a little bit with my legs. And then I want to be saying, get ready. And then I want to be able to give the aid. Does anybody have any questions about this? Thank you, Kim. Let me get rid of that. I want to get rid of that. Stop doing that, please. There we go. Does anybody have any questions about like how you would? I will write these patterns down for you if that's, you know, and then I'll send them in the notes tomorrow. But yeah, right. I know. And so when we talk about that, what other things can we possibly think about in life where we get too perfectionistic? And if we just kept going, would it get better? You know, not just in our pattern riding with our horses, but I think that there's other things as well, whether it's in work or something creative that you want to do for yourself. So I I really like this concept for myself, you know, that just keep going. Just keep going. Don't get stuck in it. Don't stop and reset. Just keep going. So yes, thank you, Meg. And because of the judging and because of the way you're marked on each movement, something starts happening that backs us up instead of pushes us forward. And I find that these types of patterns just keep you thinking about the next thing. Keep you thinking about the next thing. I got to get, if you're jumping, you know, you don't want to be backing your horse up. You want to get the horse a little bit on your aids, right? If it can't be running along, but that's what this does is it's kind of I'm going to canter here. Like my body has to start to get ready and you know, my horse has to listen. And then on that same way, the repetition of it, if you do them 2 or 3 times in a row, you start to catch on how can you do it better. If the second time you do the pattern, it's worse, your corrections are you're thinking in the wrong way. If the second time you do the pattern, it's better, then the third time is better, then you are learning the lesson and you're teaching your horse the lesson in the right way. If you repeat it and the pattern ends up actually worse, then you need to reset your thought pattern about how to make that pattern better. Okay. So am I preparing far enough in advance? Am I riding forward enough? Is my horse carrying me to the next thing? Those kind of things. Am I, you know, riding a little bit tight and holding, worrying about making a mistake? That's really what I want you to do is when you're each thing you're in, be in it and then look for reactions. Don't look to have to hold your horse through it. Okay. And most often, if you're holding your horse through it, the next time you do the pattern, it will be worse. If you're expecting reactions, the next time you do the pattern, it will be better. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I would love it if the one other thing I wanted to say for instance, for Dana, who's riding around jumps a lot of the times, make the jumps part of your pattern. So instead of where I am saying at this letter, at this letter, at this letter, you're going to say, you know, I'm going to make my circle around this jump. I'm going to go forward down the long side toward that corner. I'm going to make a change of direction around this jump. So just use the jumps as landmarks since you don't have letters, and don't feel like you have to be, you know, doing the lines exactly what I'm talking about, but make sure that you create a pattern that, and then you are really asking yourself like, oh, well, it were, you know, this time I end up on that side of the jump instead of the other. No, you have to be a little bit accurate about picking those lines and, you know, maybe going forward here and coming back there, or this circle might be this size around that jump and it might be that size around that area. Okay. So that's okay too. Or, you know, if you don't have a dressage arena with letters, you can put cones or you can put anything to mark places so that you are working on your accuracy. You know, we used to also even put cones in the middle of the arena where we wanted to be changing the bending, or you know, to bring attention that we were really making the figures the right size. Or you can put rails to make your center lines, that you have to go in between the rails to make your center line, just to help you be more accurate. Okay. Any questions? I'm sorry about my muddled upness with the arena to get started, but I don't know why I couldn't find that the first time. Anyway, I will write them out, and now I think it was okay, good to look at them a little bit on the thing. And then when you're looking at it, with the letters, I can also send, for those of you guys that don't have that arena clear in your head, I can send the arena too, because that's how I'll spell out the patterns, is like C to circle at C and down the long side by MBF and that kind of thing. All right. Excellent. I love it. So if you don't have any questions, a couple of you guys make some working patterns for me this week, and then let me know how it goes. How does it feel? How did your horse feel after you did them? I would love to hear it. All right. And we can get more into it next week. We can do even some more advanced ones. Just, that you can bring down or bring up depending on the level of your horse. So we'll work a little bit more on this next week. And so if you have questions, you think of questions during the week that you can't think of right now, be sure to email them to me, and then we can go over that next week, because I think this is a really helpful subject. What do I do in between my lessons? And what this is getting you thinking like is that is how I think. What exercise it is going to get your horse and you thinking on the right way, so that everything feels easier, so things make more sense. All right.